H2K trying to stay in the race. These bans are coming hot and heavy, though. It's Camille, Zach off the board, followed by another Anivia.
Now, Selfie did play one Anivia game during one of his first debut games, actually, onto the LCS. He didn't have the best performance, but Splyce clearly have a strategy in mind where that Anivia could perhaps get in the way. We've seen how effective it can be against low-range champions, things like the Sivir, for example, maybe even the Sion, given how effectively you can just throw up that wall. And Sion is currently available for both teams. Galio still ready to go. Sejuani, another potential power pick, along with the Rise and Azir. Many strong picks available in the current patch. That's one of the reasons why we do see teams slightly favor red side in the current meta, because, well, I mean, why not get 2 power picks over 1? Well,
that's usually good math for sure. Now the Galio is removed. On Splyce's side, definitely want to zero in on that Kog'Maw, because that was something that Sheriff had to great success the other day. Rise also taken away, so only 180 carry banned, a handful of mid laners.
Zyra Khan still up and available. Could be something that Sheriff looks to lock in. Remember their epic game versus Giants, where Sheriff had that amazing quadra kill to defend the base. Could be something that they look to prioritize. Caitlyn is another one of Sheriff's preferred AD carries, and it will give you that strong laning phase, and it's just a trend that we've been seeing for a lot of European teams right now.
He's got that name synergy as well. Now, it's over to Splyce. Maybe they opt to take the Zyra Khan. Of course, Kasing is a different type of support. We've seen the zillion out of him. Talk about keeping his team alive. I wonder if they do lock it all in, or if they focus more towards the jungle, more towards the top. Xerxe, Odoamne both been stepping up in their roles of late.
Well, remember, Sion's still up and available, one of the most contested picks in the current meta, and Splyce is going to secure that. We'll remember this time that it can be flexed to both mid and
that is true.
top.
I think it's more likely Odo takes it than
one
Nisqy,
would
though.
expect, but it depends on what H2K choose to do. If they go for a counter pick like a Trundle, then you want to move it out of that lane, put it in the mid where it can have a little bit more of an impact. But perhaps if it's something like a Cho'Gath where they say, okay, it's just a farm lane, they perhaps choose to keep him in the top. So we'll keep our eyes out for that. Right now, Splyce choose to round out their second half of the first pick phase with a Tristana. So a little weak during the laning phase, very similar to what we saw in game 1. But that means that H2K now have the freedom. They can lock themselves in a Jarvan, perhaps. Maybe get themselves a Sejuani. Both very common junglers that Shook has looked to prioritize. And interesting, the H2K may look to get themselves a solid mid laner right now, rather than getting themselves a safe Cho'Gath to try and answer the Sion up in the top lane. Or alternatively, they don't want to try and get themselves a support either.
But still switching things up. We have a few more seconds before it ends up getting locked in. Do we go and see that farm lane up towards the top side? Cho'Gath still healthy, scaling into the later stages of the game, and as the timer ticks down, H2K will lock it in to pair with that Sejuani. Big beefy front line for this H2K squad.
Now remember, Splyce do have the ability to flex. If they have the counter pick for the Cho'Gath, they can save that for later on into the draft, and they move the Sion down into the mid lane. That's not quite what I'm expecting. I think that for Splyce right now, they're going to look to try and save their support for the second half of the draft as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do in fact choose to lock in their mid laner right now. Oh, but of course, Skarner. How could we forget Skarner? My word. So many power picks in the current meta right now that some of them just slip through the cracks.
Well, that one certainly did, so it's locked in for Xerxe right now to pair up with that Sion. There's definitely a lot of ways Splyce can catch out opposing members there.
Now you would expect Splyce to ban away the Tahm Kench because he is one of the biggest counters. It kind of alleviates the need to always go for the QSS because you can just gobble up the target that ends up getting rooted on. So it wouldn't surprise me if Splyce looked to ban away those supports that basically just make Skarner's life a little bit more difficult.
Still got one more ban to go for the Splyce side. This is the Alistar that they took off the board already. Well, let's see what H2K decide to answer with. Taking their time, H2K are actually going very slow and deliberately through this ban phase, and it's Janna that they actually opt to remove.
Showing a lot of respect towards Kasing. He's played a lot of supports. Braum, Tahm, Janna, and Zilean are all his most played at 3 games each.
Guess which one of those is not like the others?
The Zilean.
I was going to say the Janna, but okay.
Oh, also true. So they choose not to ban away the Tahm Kench. They may look to pick it up for themselves. Always an option. Great as an answer to the Sejuani in the later game as well. And given that quite a few supports have already been banned off the board, would not be a terrible pick. The Zilean being thrown out as well. So a lot of respect going towards Kasing. I think the Tahm Kench would make a decent amount of sense right now for Splyce. It would allow H2K to go for the Caitlyn Braum down towards the bottom side. And I think that would be the most logical option for Splyce.
Okay. Still taking their time as well. And Splyce might end up opting to take away the Tahm Kench themselves. A lot of flashing back and forth on this last pick, but maybe they want to save it for the end. It's the Azir coming in for Nisqy. Old standby, his most played champion.
It seems very odd to me. Like, they were hovering the Tarm. We talked a lot about how Tarm seems to make the most sense. They could have saved the option of the Sion still being a flex pick, forcing Selfie to pick a mid laner, which then could have given Nisqy the winning matchup. But he says, you know what? Most of the mids are banned out. It would kind of force Selfie onto maybe an Echo that we did see, or the Veigar as an answer. But I feel like going for the Azir now just gave H2K more options in the draft, and they're going to go for the scaling. So Cho'Gath in the top lane against Sion, pretty strong winning lane. Caitlyn down towards the bottom side, loses a little bit of pressure with the Tahm Kench, but it's still powerful, and I think the Tahm Kench could act as a very effective answer to the Skarner as well. I think overall, if it is locked in, H2K drafted themselves a very well-rounded comp, more geared towards scaling, but they still have winning lanes that they can look to play around. And instead they're going for a little bit more lane dominance with the Braum. Personally not a fan, think the Tahm Kench makes more sense, but H2K, they're confident with it.
I mean, maybe they're worried that they might fall a little bit far behind. We saw that happen yesterday before they could bring it back, and up against Splyce, that might be a difficult thing to bear. Now, last pick, we're still waiting to see what Kasing's choice of support will be. He's been known for some interesting picks in the past. Let's see if they go for some extra laning damage as well, and it's the Lulu locked in. We got a Yordle bot lane, Vedius.
So you can look to be a little bit more aggressive in the 2 versus 2 when you're paired up with a Lulu, a new range support that, while Kasing has played it so far during the regular season, hasn't seen much prevalence. And I think that still, because of Tristana, she is rather weak in terms of the very early laning phase. Caitlyn vastly outranges her and can put a lot of pressure down. The fact that you have a range support paired up with you as well and decent wave clear on the Tristana could make this 2 vs 2 a little bit easier for Splyce, but you're also setting up Kobbe to be this big carry again in the late game. You do have the Sion, so there's a top lane that you can potentially play through, but the Azir in the mid just going to be focused on scaling. Will not struggle really against the Veigar during the early laning phase, but in these mid to late game team fights, going to be much harder to execute against the small wizard of evil and death.
Very apt description. Now, for Splyce, it does seem like they've gone with a very time-tested style of composition that they've had so much success on. Would you have liked to see something a little bit different out of this team who has had their other players really stepping up in recent weeks?
No, I think that the draft from both teams is fine. I think both are geared towards scaling up into the late game. I think both have lanes that they can look to play around. And I think that both teams will largely just come down to execution. I am question marking the Azir pick just given where it was in the draft, because it gave Selfie this Veigar, which I think is going to be really the big swing point in the fights to come. And also Sheriff on his comfort, picking the Caitlyn. I have high expectations for him to really match the kind of pressure that Kobbe is looking to do for Splyce.
Once again, the playoff race is getting incredibly tight. Splyce clear in the lead, looking for that second bye if they can secure it. However, H2K still trying to vie for a playoff berth altogether, which would be an incredible turnaround from how they started this split. We heard from Promisq earlier about what a big thing it would be for him and for the H2K organization.
Well, Deficio is a believer in H2K. I've heard a few other analysts be believers in H2K as well. I believe even Broxer on PGL yesterday said that he could easily see H2K making it. And given that the organization itself has quite the history of making it into playoffs,
they do.
I think that considering the gamble, I guess you could say, they took on this roster for things to work out, would definitely be a great way for them to end their regular season.
Yep. And now as things get underway, we see the infamous Skarner minigame playing out on stage. Xerxe already finding some of his pillars already taken away. No shenanigans inside the jungle, though, just yet. But as you mentioned, this will be a very scaling-oriented game.
Expectations are, from me, Pyra, that early game will not have a huge number of ganks. There won't be a huge number of action. And I think we're going to see a very similar thing to what we saw when H2K kind of went up against G2, where the comps really come online past the 25-minute mark.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because, I mean, come online is one way to put it. I liked Veteran's description, int for 25 minutes, and then win the game. Just H2K things.
I mean, I think they should avoid inting for the first 25 minutes, and I think with the comp that they're going up against, it'll be better. But yeah, what a great win for H2K in terms of confidence, in terms of position in the standings. They needed that win in order to stay really in contention with all the other teams that are fighting for that playoff spot. They found it. And now getting a win over Splyce could be huge to them as well. We talked a lot in the last game about how every single game matters. this one is just another example of that. Will they close the gap between themselves and Giants, who picked up a win, or will they separate themselves from some of the top 6 teams? So many things to look forward to over the course over this day and next week.
It's really coming down to the wire in that playoff race for sure. Nothing is set in stone. But it is just so impressive to see the growth out of H2K. And yeah, they did a lot of shakeups. It was hard to tell exactly how strong this team would be. There were, a lot of mentions of the Shook effect. We're seeing him on screen right now. Very decisive player, bringing some experience to some of the newer members of the H2K roster. Selfie also coming in as well. But it is important to note how well Sheriff has done in the last couple weeks. We've seen him on these late game carries, and this is why Caitlyn's a favorite of his. He just pumps out the damage.
Yeah. And on the other side for Splyce, they're fighting for that second place spot. It's really important for them to be able to kind of end that way when you consider the amount of criticism. I was one of the big critics of the team. I said that coming into the split they would be really strong and they'd gradually fall off. The opposite ended up happening, and they ended up becoming a strong playoff contender. And they want to solidify themselves as a top team in Europe. This team was thrown together full of veterans. Like, you look at the names across the board and you can see all of them have experience. A lot of these players have gone to Worlds. And it's I don't know if I'd call it a star-studded roster. At least that wasn't necessarily the expectation coming in.
It's definitely bright and shiny, though.
But it is, as you rightly said, bright and shiny. And every single name you see, you would kind of expect greatness from. So it's nice to see that Splyce are reaching that point. They're now 9-6, and a win here will temporarily put them in a solid second place.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting how they've been able to get to that point, too. If you look at their game yesterday, it was just so incredibly clean. They were able to close it out. I mean, from Baron take to game end was pretty much the exact duration of the Baron buff up against the Misfits. I mean, that's as clean as it actually gets.
Yep, certainly is. They'll be looking for a similar performance today. As expected, we haven't seen a huge amount of action in the first 5 minutes of the game. It's been relatively slow, focus on farming. Pretty much all the lanes are even, with a bit of an advantage built in mid, kind of as we would expect from a Azir versus Veigar matchup, where in the early game, Veigar, so short range, doesn't have the best wave clear. It's very easy for the Azir to punish him.
Yeah, it's definitely worth noting as well that Selfie's the one who hasn't played the Veigar this split compared to Nisqy, but there's a reason that champion has been kind of coming up every now and again when you have some of those bans in the mid lane, especially with the likes of Galio, other safe choices like that off the board. It's because the later this game goes, Veigar gets really freaking scary.
It's true, but one of the bigger things is the event horizon and how much impact it can have in zoning away someone like an Azir from a fight. It becomes a lot harder to do the Shurima shuffle, and he is a relatively mid-range mage that the event horizon can really do a good job of just zoning you away from. So I think that Veigar overall is a great pick into Azir later on into the game. But in the early game, we want to see Nisqy maybe even camp this lane. Once the level 6 comes out from Xerxe, get the Predator up, get the flank off, force a flash out, maybe go for an early kill down onto the small bringer of doom.
Well, we've got a few more minutes before that level 6 will come into play. So let's zero down in on the bottom lane, because you mentioned how the lane dominance should come in for the Yordle bot lane. But for the most part, both these AD carries have been really doing their jobs effectively. Kobbe has been especially a standout performer on the Splyce team when really no one else was.
Yeah, and this is their stats from patch 8.4, so that was yesterday and last week. You can just see how much Sheriff really has stepped up. The average damage per minute that he has thrown out, it was brought down a little bit yesterday. Last week, he had an average damage per minute of 1.2k. And Kobbe, the difference in damage that you're seeing is now just the fact that he's less of the reliant. You don't rely on him to be the big carry anymore, but he still contributes significantly to the success of Splyce.
That's true. Another thing is that Splyce, for a long time known as this very late game team, actually have the fastest game time on patch 8.4. So something is definitely closed up in terms of how long they take to execute things. So Kobbe doesn't need to do as much damage per minute because he ended the game so much faster.
This ties in with what we've been hearing about Splyce, in that they are a very smart team. They seem to very well understand what to do when they get themselves a lead, how to set up the side waves, how to play towards the win conditions of their comp, and overall, if you give these guys a finger, they end up taking a hand, I believe is the old expression.
Well, I mean, that's a little gruesome, but yeah, I believe you called them a more fun name earlier. Fandabulous?
Fandabulous.
I love that, actually.
And Xerxe just stole a blue.
That is also pretty
And that's
awesome.
where you'd bring out the dab emote.
Ah!
It would be that situation.
Do we allow those on stage?
Not yet.
That'd be
Perhaps
really
in the
sweet.
future.
Rito, please. All right, so Xerxe doing the two-step inside of the event horizon. But yeah, or excuse me, Nisqy. Is Xerxe feeling pretty happy so he can wiggle back into his own jungle, and Shook's denied for the time being?
It's also great because it means both jungler and mid laner get a blue, and there's no better feeling.
Sharing is caring.
I loved reading that Jankos tweet the other week where he said, love giving my mid lane a blue buff, and then he uses it to steal away my Raptors. It's definitely something I actively do. But let's see if Xerxe can steal away someone's life as he has his eyes on Smittyj.
All right, wiggling in, unstoppable onslaught. The science coming in as well, and there's the impale, the 1-2. How do you do? First blood for Odoamne.
That was a very easy kill.
Clean, if you will call it.
Setting up Odoamne for success. We talked about how top lane could be a lane for Splyce to gank during the draft. They find an early kill, and it is on to Smittyj.
What's happened yesterday against H2K as well. G2 camped the living hell out of Smittyj, and then he got his revenge also on the Cho'Gath, I want to point out. But things are off to a good start for Splyce right now. First blood, got themselves a 1,000 gold lead, and that was a perfectly executed play. Now Selfie looking to turn about fair play, grab the blue buff away from Splyce, so they do turn it back around there.
So Xerxe being very clever there, you see. He gets himself the enemy blue buff. He then ganks top, and it's not his fault that his mid laner doesn't get blue. So next level mind games to deny the mid laner the blue buff. But then he's hoping, hey, listen, Selfie can have it for the first portion of the laning phase, but if we kill him, Nisqy, then I can buff transfer the blue to you, and it refreshes. So it's all part of the long con from Xerxe, clearly understanding jungle pathing and how to keep his mid laner happy.
Well, Xerxe is definitely a player that has earned a reputation for not just being a fearsome jungler, but also a very intelligent one. He made a big splash last year on the Unicorns of Love, and we saw him towards the latter half of the year really step things up even further. And this is why we talked about Splyce being a bright and shiny roster, because Xerxe was one of those big up-and-coming players.
And I feel like he had a fantastic performance yesterday on the Zac. His use of the slingshot to help wave clear in the middle lane to help stall out against the Siege from Misfits was fantastic to watch. I think that he has developed a lot as an individual, and I loved hearing from Kasing when he was on the podcast about how different people on the team had different ways of playing, and how Nisqy and Xerxe, because they're kind of newer to the LCS and they don't have the same experience as the other three, that Xerxe and Nisqy were still trying to figure out how to play League of Legends. And Odo, Kobbe, and Kasing all had one way, and it was different from the two younger players. And they had to kind of come to a compromise and an agreement on how to play it. And now that everyone seems aligned, you can just see the fluidity in the League of Legends and how everyone is a lot more comfortable in the calls that are made, and just overall how much more trust there seems to be in the players of each other.
And that makes a world of difference, especially for a team that is composed of, as you mentioned, younger and older players coming from different times in the evolution of League of Legends.
True.
Now, we're 10 minutes into this game. As you pointed out, it's definitely going to be a little on the slower side. I would not be surprised if Xerxe makes a return play up towards the top, though. Smittyj does seem to be a very gankable top laner.
I mean, he didn't use any summoner spells, and it's very much about how the lane is set up. If Xerxe wants to be a good jungler to his mid laner, I feel like mid should be the lane to gank, but a lot of wards are coming out from Promisq. He's investing a decent amount of vision into the river and the enemy jungle so that he can control the bottom side of the map. And they could be setting up for an early Cloud Drake, but overall, love this vision setup that we're seeing from H2K.
They themselves have definitely developed over the course of the split. As Xerxe, he's coming up here, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Let's see if he can grab Smittyj. There's the onslaught. He's going to flash away. Let's see if he can turn around in time. The bullet's coming out. Shook's trying to give him more than they bargained for, but they take him down again. The Romanian rumble of Odo and Xerxe pushing back. Shook with the help of Nisqy. Emperor's Divide and down to 0. Splyce picking up 2 kills up top.
Nice roam from Nisqy helps get Splyce an additional kill onto the jungler of H2K. This is a great early game for Splyce, demonstrating that while we can get to the late game, we don't need to rely on it, and we can build ourselves a solid early game lead.
Oh boy. Splyce Boys definitely off to a solid start right here. The gold lead will extend itself another 1,000, or about 500 or so. Rift Herald being started off, but let's go back and take a look at that play as it was set up once more with Shook and Xerxe waiting in the wings.
Now, what's key to note is how quickly Nisqy can roam towards the top side, because the gank onto Smittyj pretty standard. He's a little overextended. The amount of CC that they have is pretty solid. But look, Nisqy's already here. Veigar hasn't even started moving yet. He's primed and ready to join. He knows he can help get the kill onto Shook, and even if he flashes, boom. Shurima Shuffle there to help get the assist. The ulti knocks him nicely into the Scorpion and the Undead Beast. Results in a clean 2 for 0 and an extension of the gold lead for Splyce.
Does it still count as a Shurima Shuffle if he has to flash for it?
I'm going to say yes.
All right.
Because he shuffled his booty in front of his opposition and he slid him into death.
Good play by Nisqy for sure. That's another player who's also been stepping up in his role. Yes, he's been, you know, mostly on like farming mid laners and whatnot, but he definitely has playmaking ability.
I will say, I called Nisqy bad at the start of the split.
When did you? Oh, start of the split. Okay.
He lost a lot of lanes.
I mean, it's true.
In winning matchups. I will never forget when he played Azir into Ryze and lost. Then he played Ryze into Azir and then lost. And this was the very beginning of the split.
Yeah.
So I felt like my criticisms were credible. But he, as you rightly said, he has grown a lot over the regular season. He has been able to hold his own a lot more in lane. Even on champions like Azir, he's having a great impact on the side lanes too. And this is very much what we talk about. The show is not all about the bottom lane, even though that's where the gank is happening right now.
The counter gank coming in as well. Promisq tanking up a few more shots of that explosive charge from Kobbe. Shook kind of waiting in the wings, does not have a flash available to hop over the wall. Would need Arctic Assault to make it happen. And Xerxe spotted, gonna back off. Let's see, a lot of movement, though, by both junglers trying to influence the pace of this game to get things off to an earlier start. We talked about it being slower, but it doesn't mean there isn't going to be action. And Shook returns to the blue buff. It's consolation prize this time around, and he should be able to pick it up. Maybe he's thinking the same thing that Xerxe was. I'll get it now, and then I'll get Selfie a blue buff later.
Maybe. I mean, Nisqy, he's ahead of the game. He's like, not this time. I will take the blue buff.
Want something done right,
time.
You gotta do it yourself.
Exactly. Xerxe is hanging around. He does have the smite, but Nisqy's like, no, it is my turn to shine.
I want to point out, I've been on the Nisqy hype train since Twisted Fate.
Okay, fair enough. Good for you, Pyra.
Yeah!
I was not aboard that train.
That's okay. I had a very comfortable first-class seat.
Now, Splyce moving up towards the top side. Question I wanted to raise, one that we can discuss a little bit, was H2K invested a lot of vision towards the bottom side of the map. Splyce said, nah, we don't really care about the bottom side of the map, and they've only ganked top and played towards the top side.
And they snatched them a tower as well as the Rift Herald.
And it just makes me wonder what H2K's intent was with all this bot side vision, because it felt like that they didn't really do anything with it. They didn't secure an early Drake, they didn't successfully get themselves the bot tier 1, and they haven't really made much happen with the vision that they invested in. So just makes me wonder what the goal of the vision was. Something to explore perhaps in VOD review, but it's definitely an interesting focus, because for Splyce, their vision has mainly been in the topside river. They wanted to control that so it becomes easier for Xerxe to set up ganks and really to get Odoamne ahead.
Yeah, and ahead he certainly is. Completed 2 items, including that Banner of Command, and uh-oh, Vedius, there is only one charge of Minion Dematerializer on Promisq.
Rough, rough, rough.
I think he should have saved them.
Perhaps he should have. We'll have to see. Remember that Splyce, 2,000 gold lead against a comp that still does scale well. Both very much aimed towards the team fighting, scaling, later game option. H2K have the much better Baron control because you have the Cho'Gath, who has that secondary smite with his ultimate. So Splyce, they can't just rush it down unless they have full vision control and they're able to do what they did against Misfits and just punish a small mistake. They'll have to really kind of find a successful pick or a fight, which right now they're in a good position to do, but H2K are looking to get themselves their first tower of the game.
See if they can secure it with the help of Shook. It might be in for a dive right now. Kobbe stepping far up, 2-stepping his way away from the Winter's Bite. Shook unable to find a point of ingress, though. Kobbe and Kasing are able to push back the minion wave in H2K. Meanwhile, Nisqy, Odoamne have double-teamed up in the mid to try and charge down the wave of minions there, but Selfie is able to keep them at bay.
I like the use of the Banner of Command.
That's unfortunate for Selfie.
Difficult.
Oh, yeah.
He's trying to draw the minion aggro, but it will get a decent chunk of damage down onto that tower. Shook being dragged down as well.
That minion is bigger than he is.
Yes. Don't tell him, though, because he'll get really upset and he will try to blow up your house.
I stopped short.
You're just pushing the limits with Veigar, aren't you?
Well, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained.
So now, multiple members of H2K grouped up around the middle lane, about a 3k gold lead in favor of Splyce. I'm looking at Xerxe right now, because he's sitting in that brush waiting for Sheriff to return to the lane, and he's got his eyes set on stabbing the AD carry of H2K and dragging them into his team.
You were really big on the graphic descriptions today.
Oh, I think it really sticks in people's minds, you know? It helps people
watching
remember.
like Black Mirror or something?
No, I am not.
Oh, okay.
I haven't watched much TV recently. I've only really watched League of Legends, if I'm honest. I've had to watch a lot of teams.
There has been a lot of League of Legends lately, as there always is. But
KT versus KSV was
fantastic.
It was a good series.
All right. So, but back into this game and back into this region. Remember the playoff race for H2K. They don't necessarily need to win every single game, but they pretty much do if they want to make sure they can control their own destiny, and they still are going to need some help here. Splyce, they only have to win, and they're guaranteed playoffs.
Yes, that's an excellent point to make there, Pyra. Ooh, flash out.
You can continue to make
it. Yeah. Follow up on that point. As you rightly said, Splyce, they get themselves a win, they lock in playoffs. Now for H2K, the amount of wins that they need kind of depends on the success of others as much as it does themselves. Because now that Giants got a win earlier in the day, it puts more pressure on H2K to succeed, because now there's a team that is in front of them and not tied up, right? So it's one of those situations where all of the bottom teams are battling against each other, and it's next week when they actually have to battle each other rather than the teams above them that things really start to get spicy. So the more wins you have coming into next week, the better you are set up in order to secure that playoff spot.
Yeah, and for H2K, have already taken down the likes of Misfits, have already come back miraculously. I really don't know how else to describe it against G2. It almost feels like taking out Splyce would be just another checkbox tick, but it would be nonetheless incredibly impressive against a team that has played so clean. And even in this game right now, keeping this gold lead about where it's been as we crest 18.5 minutes into this game, Splyce continuing to play around that top side, even with their duo laners occupying that space.
Now H2K continuing to scale up. You can see that Caitlyn approaching the 2 items, pretty healthy point in the game. Selfie actually going for the tier itemization, wants that shielding from the Archangel's staff that will be able to help him have that extra bit of survivability in these late game fights. But obviously it will take quite a while to scale up. He will be spamming that Q a lot though, so the stacks from the tier will not take that long to come about. And meanwhile, the Banner of Command has been completed for Smittyj. So these items rolling through. Baron going to be spawning in about 45 seconds, so that'll likely be the big win condition. H2K now pivoting their vision control towards the top side. You can see all the wards that they've invested. You can see that their goal is to take down this tower. And it's very much saying to me, H2K, they want the Baron, and they want to make sure that they do not give control over to Splyce.
Yep, trying to keep it even pace at the very least for Splyce, not letting them grow that gold lead anymore. And crucially here, you know, they have really stopped this bleeding at the moment. Smittyj, who had been beat up a number of times between Xerxe and Odoamne, has been able to farm relatively unopposed down towards the bot, leads a line of minions in here for Odoamne to try and finish off. Well, that second tower is oh so close to falling, but it should. Just a few more moments. Odoamne is actually going to let it happen. Let's see. H2K moving into the Splyce jungle here. This is a little deep right now. Let's see if they can find the pick off. Xerxe trying to push them back. Trying to contest for a Spire is not happening. It looks like they'll just be stealing away a red buff. And this all points to what you're saying, Vedius. They want to get all that vision to set up for the Baron.
H2K maintaining really solid control over the top side of the map right now, even stealing away the red buff when they're the ones that are down in gold. They have been able to get a bit of global gold back into their pockets after securing both the top and the bot outer tower. But Splyce should be the ones applying pressure. They don't feel confident enough to do that just yet. And H2K doing a great job. We're building up to that point, Pyra, where the fights will be explosive. Execution is going to be a big deal in how these fights play out. We've got to keep track of the number of QSSs that have also been built, because that's going to be a key item in mitigating some of the pick potential that Xerxe will be able to bring.
Well, I can tell you the current number right now. It is 0.
Nil.
That is going to be happy for Xerxe.
Yes,
he is very useful at the moment.
His eyes will definitely be on the Veigar.
Oh, yeah.
You will want to snatch him up and quickly take him out to mitigate as much of his damage as possible. And it's interesting, right? Because you can actually chain CC really, really well. So you drag them in with the Skarner ultimate. You then use the Azir wall to knock them back even further. Then you whimsy them so that they can't flash or anything. And then if you really want to be BM, you use Tristana ultimate to knock them into your Nexus.
Or you have Sion just headbutt them with his ultimate.
That could also happen.
Yeah, so there's a lot of tools to basically pinball anyone they choose on H2K's side.
You can literally throw them all across the map. If they had an Alistar, that would be the only way it could get better, but they banned him. So
unlucky.
The dream will not come to fruition. Now, H2K actually starting the Baron. Remember, Cho'Gath, really good at securing this. Let's see how they use it to bait some of the spells out from Splyce.
Already down to half. There's going to be a teleport coming in for Odoamne. Splyce trying to collapse.
They're going to
be able to get there in time. This Baron is certainly going to go down early. Smite right now. Xerxe has come in. It's going to be finished off by Sheriff, but the fight is on. Xerxe is a big Scorpion in here, but Kobbe has already taken out his opposite number. Promisq soon to fall. That's a double kill for the Tristana. Smittyj going to be left for dead, and so is Shook. Pushed back by the Emperor's Divide. Splyce will leave none alive. Except for Smittyj, excuse me, Selfie, he's gonna live, but that's just about it, and a triple kill for the Tristana. Holy moly, that was not a worth Baron.
Splyce might lose the Baron, but they decimate H2K. 7-0 in the kills. Splyce take the whole jungle. They're gonna look to take more towers. And while the play itself looked good from the outside, H2K could not get away with their lives.
Yeah. Splyce able to pull off that collapse. Selfie lives to tell the tale. He's got the Baron buff on, but this is going to give so much advantage over to Splyce. A huge gold swing for them. 3,500 now in the lead, and they should be able to finish off this bottom tower without anyone there to contest. Kobbe got 3 kills in that fight.
Yeah. He is definitely going to be one happy AD carry. Now, Splyce, they only secured the outer tower in the bottom lane, but securing that many kills is fantastic. Now, we talked about teamfight execution. Very early event horizon allows Xerxe to just dive in, lock up the AD carry, and he is blown up immediately. Selfie zoned out of the fight from Odoamne, who then gets stunned up, but Nisqy's like, my eyes is not on the cleanup. I've got to get these extra targets. Unfortunately, I cannot get onto Selfie, but regardless, we can kill out the jungler, and we can get an extra kill down onto Kobbe.
Yeah, so we talked about how Splyce was going to want to lock up and knock back Selfie all over the place, but it's just as well that they can get everyone else on the team, and everybody played the part in that last team fight.
7-0 in the kills right now for Splyce. 4,000 gold lead. This is definitely going to be a very small Baron power play for H2K. Let's see if another engage comes out.
Here comes the unstoppable onslaught, intercepted by Shook, and they pull him back and take him down to 0. Primordial burst, Odoamne eats it right up, and the wild growth is on to keep him alive. Smittyj trying to walk away with a whimsy. Make his step in a little bit shorter.
And look at the combo from Kasing and Xerxe. The moment that someone gets dragged in, the ultimate wears off, instant whimsy. So there is permanent crowd control stacked onto whatever target gets grabbed, and that allows Splyce to secure themselves a kill. But there's still Baron empowered minions running it down mid. Splyce, they actually split themselves up, and they could lose a tower here.
They certainly could. Big old minion dematerialized, and that's going to save Splyce's mid tower for the time being. It just goes to show H2K still are a sieging threat even after losing their jungler. Nisqy back up towards the top side. They're going to try and keep these waves pushed, but H2K are definitely not going down without a fight, despite the fact that they haven't been able to find any kills.
Oof. Very back and forth game. Baron will now be Baron will now no longer be an objective to play around until the next one respawns. Could result in a bit of a slow passage of play for the time being, but Splyce, they don't really need to rely on the Baron. Remember, in terms of the Baron taking speed, we saw how quick it was for H2K and how effectively they can zone Splyce away from the objective in order to secure it. So I feel like Splyce's main goal will be to try and find a fight before the objective spawns and then secure it once they've been able to take out some of the members of H2K.
Especially while they've got those item advantages. Look at the Tristana right now, sitting on 3. Compare that to only 2 and a few pieces for Sheriff. Splyce can throw their weight around a little bit. Cloud Drake's up. Should be a pretty free objective. Unless Shook can pull some razzle-dazzle. Grab himself, smite in and out. Not even worth attempting, though.
Very late first strike. Looks like Infernal will be on the board. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, you should always look to try and get an early Drake, because you don't know what's going to spawn next. And I'm sure Splyce would have loved to have had a couple of extra Infernals under their belt, but they will not have the opportunity. Instead, now Splyce group up in the middle lane. H2K looking to hold them off as long as they can.
It's going to be hard when the Tristana's firing explosive shots. Odoamne tanking up a few more tower shots as it goes. H2K do regroup to push back. And the fans are very excited.
I believe that is the Romanian flag.
Yeah.
So I would assume that they are in fact Splyce fans. And I did see a couple of French supporters in the crowd chanting Nisqy earlier on. So I believe that there are quite a few Splyce fans in the audience today. They'll be happy to see Splyce win, I would imagine.
So far, got to be pretty happy with the 8-0, 26.5 minutes into this game. Controlling most of the map, especially focusing on this middle and on the bottom side now, since there's nothing to play for up top.
It's very true. I imagine the top wave will be cleared out. Nisqy, level 16, 3 items finished on the Azir. We've seen a couple rushes of the Banshee's Veil. We saw it on Nukeduck yesterday. Now, against Veigar, I think it makes a lot of sense because it really helps that pick potential, or mitigate it rather, from Selfie. But a good event horizon there from Selfie to deny Odo from the engage, but I feel like they're looking for a fight right now.
Now Whimsy up, and there's the Pain Train charging in, finding the Veigar, he flashes the smash, and let's see how the fight's gonna go. He's taking up all the damage. Promisq knocks him back up, but he's gonna get melted down. Xerxe with the final shot, and he's still got his ultimate if he wants to wiggle in to grab another. H2K wounded, have to walk away.
Flashes up as well, but no Baron available just yet. Another successful engage from Splyce. Their eyes are on this mid-tier 2.
Should be pretty easy to take, even with a massive rupture from Smittyj. It's not going to matter. Their base is in danger of falling to pieces. Fundus comes up as Nisqy covers the last of the minions. Baron, empowered cannon minion, doing the work, charging his way in. No dematerializer stacks available. Scratch that. Promisq has one, but he's currently occupying the fountain space, and this is going to be the opening up of the H2K base. Splyce flexing their muscles, not keen to give H2K even a single kill in this game.
H2K very afraid to engage onto this Splyce lineup. Minus 2,000 gold Baron power play. So Splyce, I think, not too upset after losing that objective. It will be spawning in about 50 seconds time. Another opportunity for H2K to regain some control over the game. But in terms of scaling, Splyce definitely slightly ahead of the curve as these 4th items are starting to be completed for both Nisqy and Kobbe.
H2K have had such a hard time when Splyce hit the go button. Odoamne charges in, they've got nothing that can stop him. Xerxe is able to grab someone, pull him back. I mean, it's a hell of a pain train. And unfortunately, they just haven't been able to find an answer this game. The good news for H2K, with their Baron taking ability, is that that objective will be spawning in 20 seconds. The bad news? They're going to be walking into a nest of wards if they do it.
You can see Splyce primed and ready. Good ward over the wall, though, from one of the members of H2K that should be able to spot out the beginning of it. That's why you always want to drop a control ward in the Baron pit and outside of it. And there we go. To make sure that you do control the river. Not going to rush it down just yet. Waiting for the opportune moment. Seeing if they can find a pick onto H2K first.
All right, Shook steps forward, gets a ward over the wall. Let's see if Splyce want to start up the Baron. Not super keen on it. They don't need to take it, as you mentioned. It's not part of the game plan for this team, not necessarily. If they can grab it, that'd be great. But they are super happy if they were going to peel off instead. Should be easy to take now that Sheriff is backed and looks to return to the team. Nothing doing, no contests. Splyce picked that one up easy.
Azir Baron, man. Extremely quick, very easy take there for Splyce. Looking like another very convincing game for this, for the Snakes in yellow.
I remember the last time what happened when Splyce took a Baron. Game ended before the buff was
minutes.
Up. Just about. It is rough for H2K though. Remember, like, every win is going to be so important for this team to keep that Cinderella story alive, to try and make the playoffs. But right now, they're going to need a miracle to turn this game around. Big gold deficit here. Scaling still strong, but they need time. They need items. Hell, they need some gold, and they need to stop that damn Baron minion.
Oh, look at Xerxe, he's going in.
Zooming in, gets the Impale. Let's see if they got the damage. Instead, Promisq suppressed, but he's able to turn it back around, get the Glacial Fissure, knock them all up. H2K stay alive for now, but there's a big wave of minions trying to charge into their base. Kobbe, Nisqy, Kasing, everyone on the Splyce side trying to keep this push going. They already have lost the inhibitor in the middle, and H2K will not give them a tower up top.
Oof, but they can just wait for the next minion wave to arrive. You can see Nisqy going up to grab it, empower those minions so they move a little bit faster. Xerxe also pushing in the mid, and keep your eyes on the bottom wave as well. A big minion stack is starting to group. Splyce controlling all 3 waves extremely nicely, and they're just waiting for Kobbe to get into range to start crushing that tower.
H2K might already be well looking past this game. The last couple they've got. And remember, all they need to do is knock down the Nexus to qualify for the playoffs. Xerxe not with the team. He's going on his own mission down towards the bot to keep things pushed in, and no one from H2K is responding to this. It's just chip damage on the turret.
They don't have to rush anything. They're not taking any big risks, but here comes an engage from H2K.
All right, Odoamne, he's going to be able to take the train out back the other way, and meanwhile, while this is all happening, H2K realize there's a lot of minions and a big Scorpion on the bottom of their base. They're going to send Cho'Gath to deal with it, but it might be too late to save this tower. It is already gone, and Smittyj just cannot get there to clean up in time.
Splyce playing all 3 lanes beautifully right now. The Infernal Drake has spawned, but nobody cares. H2K just doing their best to defend. A minute and 20 left on the Baron buff. Splyce should be able to open up at least the last 2 inhibitors from H2K.
It's the fantabulous macro that you're talking about, Vedius, continuing to keep H2K at bay. Desperation trying to push them back, but that tower is going to fall to an explosive charge, and now the inhibitor is bare. Xerxe still freely hitting on the bottom side. H2K, if they don't pull something soon, they're going to just slowly lose this game.
That's quite right, Pyra. Now the ultimate is available for Odoamne, but the same can be said for Shook. They're losing the rest of their base as they try to defend up top. Here comes the engage.
They've got to go, but Kobbe's already jumped out right now. Smittyj trying to lead the charge, and in from the backside is going to come Xerxe. Let's see if he's going to pull anyone back into his own team. He'd have to run right through, but last of the inhibitor is going to fall before it even begins. Minions already on the bottom, already in the mid lane. H2K, they just don't seem to have anything left in the tank right now, and in comes the Sion charging, stopping short, and they're going to pull back one. Let's see if they can take down Smittyj. Emperor's Divide, that's a lot of damage, and that's going to be all they needed. Taking out 1, taking out 2. 3 members remaining. Splyce standing tall. Let's see if Odoamne can survive the last shot. He's going to flash away, but while everyone's occupied, another triple kill comes in for Kobbe. They're going to melt it through, and the pain train is pulling away for Splyce. Next stop, playoffs.
With that win, Splyce secure themselves a spot in the playoffs. Everything that they have been working for finally comes to fruition. They are yet to lock in a position, but they are guaranteed to be top 6 here in Europe, and we will be seeing them in either the quarterfinals or potentially the semifinals as they make that race towards that bye.
They still have the opportunity to snatch that bye, and with the way this team is playing right now, I do not think that is far out of the realm of possibility.
Not a single death. 12-0-34. It was not a perfect game. They did lose a Baron. They lost a couple towers, but that was, regardless, a very well executed and beautiful game from Splyce.
And for a team like H2K that I think it's been difficult for people to know exactly what to expect out of them week to week, they've had such a surge against some really strong teams, and Splyce just completely and utterly shut that down.
Felt like that H2K had a good idea around playing around the Baron, and it felt like that going for the Baron itself was smart, but they then couldn't get the successful fight afterwards. They couldn't really translate that into any more control over the game, and once Splyce secured themselves more control over the map, that was it. H2K weren't trying to be proactive, they weren't trying any last-ditch efforts, and it felt like the Splyce were just gradually bleeding them out. But at the same time, Splyce did a great job of just not getting engaged on. They just spent so much time stalling and delaying and basically preventing H2K from doing anything while they played on all 3 lanes very, very cleanly and eventually just tore apart the base.
Well, they just kept yoinking one member of H2K. You can't fight 4v5 constantly, and that was what was so impressive about it. We thought we were in for a long scaling battle, but Splyce just scaled a hell of a lot faster. That's what happens when you get kills.
It was a slow game, right? I mean, it was still 33 minutes, still keeping up with the average game time that Splyce have demonstrated on this patch.
Which is a lot faster than before.
It's definitely a lot faster when they had the longest average wins of the regular season.
And they would come back into games like consistently.
Yeah, they were always winning with gold deficits, but now we're seeing a much more well-rounded Splyce. We're seeing what I wanted to see, Pyra, which was consistency from this team. Last week, I wasn't sold. This week, I am. Splyce, definitely a top team here.
Well, we're gonna hear from Kasing in just a few with Medic, of course, so we'll maybe have them ask about how they've been able to get so much more consistent lately.
Well, I imagine we're going to get a chance right now.
Yeah, well, before that, we are always eager to know who you think deserves the player of the game, so go over to LOL Esports on Twitter and vote in the poll. Your options, of course, are Xerxe, Odoamne, and Nisqy. I do think it was a big team effort, but those 3 did stand out.
Ooh, yes, I agree.
Who would you vote for?
That's the one. I'm not entirely sure. I feel like a very team effort. I think I would edge towards Xerxe.
I would too, just because he made the flashy highlight plays, literally flashing on people and impaling them.
That's very
true. Which of course sounds super awesome. Now to hear more from Splyce's win, let's send it over to Medic, who's standing by with their support.
Thank you very much, Pyra. I am here with the Laughing Master Kasing. I think that's what I have to call you from now on.
Just a bit.
Congratulations, guys. That means you've won. Winning that game gets you into playoffs. You are secured there. Not secured your spot yet. How does it feel to get into playoffs?
I mean, making playoffs is definitely like, well, really good for me because I wanted top 6, and of course, now that you're in playoffs, you're definitely top 6 for sure. But I think I still want to go a bit higher, maybe top 4, but you know, that's my goal anyway.
So top 4 at the end of the regular split?
Yes.
Or, okay,
that's my, like...
You're in the running for top 2 still. You know, you're right at the top of there. If G2 lose today, you're actually sole possession of top 2 if Vitality lose as well. Do you think that's something you should be aiming for? I
mean, I think we're definitely aiming for number 2 because, of course, you know, we're not playing to just throw our last few games, you know, just because we're in playoffs. But it'll definitely be hard, but I think we can definitely do it.
So, alongside that, you know, the start of the split wasn't the best for you guys. It was kind of a bit inconsistent. Last 2 weeks, you've gone 2-0, 2-0. What has changed for Splyce that have made you a more consistent team?
I think the fact that we're more consistent and, you know, the results are showing off is, like, really good for us because the fact that we basically play like an objective now and we, you know, play, how do I say it? You basically play to your win condition. And maybe before, in the 1-1 weeks, we basically kind of trolled, and maybe it might have been me, but basically, I think we just, you know, just played better.
I'm sorry for crashing this, but I just wanted to thank you for saving my life at the end.
Thank you. That's some love there. There's some respect between Odoamne and Kasing.
Did he just kiss me? I think he did.
I think he did. That's some teammate bonding. And alongside that, I can announce as well, player of the game went to Xerxe, another one of your teammates. He's really stepped up in the last few weeks.
I mean, Xerxe definitely proves that he is one of the best junglers. And, you know, if this game, not even this game, the last game as well, or yesterday, doesn't show it, then I don't know who the best jungler is. Maybe Godgilius.
I'm going to ask you for a quick call before we go to a break. You've got top 6 left there. G2, Vitality aren't secured yet. Do you think we'll see any surprises with the top 6 playoff berths?
I actually think... I feel like G2 and Misfits... Initially, I would think G2 would be like number 2, right? But from what I've seen recently, it hasn't been that good, but maybe because they just haven't, like, meshed as well, or maybe just have a bad day. But I feel like Misfits has been pretty subpar to what I would expect. So I think Misfits actually maybe will be like number 4, 5, 6. Maybe they might even make playoffs because the bottom teams are actually quite good. Yeah, lots of the bottom teams keep winning. We'll have to see if Misfits do make it. Congratulations again on your win and on your kiss from Odoamne. I'm sure you'll cherish that forever. Thank you very much, guys. We'll be right back after this. Stay tuned.